Okay, so today is our lesson 4, producer. We will discuss types of producers, production office, production management, and production budget. So how we calculate all the money and what we spend money on during the filmmaking process. But before it, as usual, not as usual, but a nice tradition. So I need to test you. Oh, that's the Russian one. But anyway, so that's the Kino test. So did you have time to refresh something from the previous lessons? How do you feel about going through 10 questions? Are you ready? Okay, ready, steady, go. So, the first one. What's Edward Muybridge is famous for? You have a picture? If you don't really remember the name, so maybe you remember the picture. Horse pictures. The horse. Oh, right. The horse in motion experiment. Maybe you remember the year when this horse experiment was conducted. That's a little bit more challenging question, but anyway. Yeah, that was not 80s, it was 70s. Not really 75, but very close. 79, 1 year earlier, 78. Okay, why cannot we consider Edward Muybridge as the father of moving pictures? What's wrong with him and with his experiment? Why this horse in motion is not the first film? Suggestion from Anton. Multiple cameras used. Do you remember how many? From a few cameras. 12 or 16? 12. Okay, that's good. That's a good start. Which film did Lumiere brothers show first to their public screen in 1895? Factory, leaving the factory. So this is just some words. Okay, the factory. Workers leaving the Lumiere factory. Okay. Name 2 more film studios from the original Big Five. So you have Paramount Pictures, Universal Films, or then it became Universal Pictures as well, Warner Brothers, and 2 more. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, with Roaring Lion, yeah, and 1 more. And then has suggestion for Fox. 20th Century Fox. So two more two more companies, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer or MGM, and 20th Century Fox. Okay. Which stage of film production cycle can be the longest? It can take months or years. Pre-production cannot take that much time. Or unless you have lots of money. Well, post-production cannot take that long because then you will have, well, with post-production you're supposed to have a deadline. You like must have a deadline, otherwise you will lose all your money. So it's development, the right answer from nowhere. So only in development, while you're just thinking of finding some idea or thinking of like adapting a book or I don't know, some kind of novel. So you're just thinking of going into production. You're thinking about your opportunities. So you can be a producer, you can be a writer, you can be a film director. So in this stage, so it's indefinite. So you can spend as much time as you want, as much time as you have. So it can be the longest stage. Okay. What's another name of production stage of filmmaking process? So of course we call it production, but it has another name. Principle. Of course we can also name it like shooting period, as shooting stage, or filming stage as well. Yeah, but if we talk more in professional, yeah, principal photography. Yeah, so that's when the camera is rolling. All right. Who gets the Oscar for the best picture? The producer. And if we just step in a little bit into our today's topic, what kind of producer? Just producer? Or maybe in some types of producers? Maybe you already know some names of producers. Managing producer? Okay. Because before we talked mostly about just producer, film director, director of photography. So we name this person the producer, but there are different types of producers. Okay, we will find out. So who this person really is, what type of producer gets the Oscar. But it's not managing. What's the genre of this film? If you remember, so I told you at the previous lesson that it's better to use at least 2 or 3 genres to describe a film. First should be about the emotion, if we, so what type of emotions we experience. Is it a happy movie, a sad movie, a scary movie? Then we travel to the time. So if it's past or future, and then another component, so that to narrow. So we have suggestions. Social drama, why not? Crime, drama, action. Okay, so at least it is drama. Yeah, that's not comedy. Okay, that's drama. So people are being killed. So then it's crime. Yeah. Does anybody want to label Joker as science fiction? Or action? Action can be also. No. Okay. Well, if you go, if you visit IMDb, so you will find crime, you will find drama, and you will also find thriller. So it can be thriller as well. It can be, of course. Oh, hello. Hello, hello. Yeah, it can be. It well, it feels more like it's a social drama because we connect film to. It's a great connection to nowadays, because now, like, having seen this film, we know that it's a great reflection of what's happening in society nowadays. So therefore, we don't really see Joker as a Joker, like a character from Marvel story, Marvel world. And we Joker for us just a regular person, like a normal person who has some problems. So we don't really connect it to Marvel, to Batman, because there are no this other characters from this world. Yes, so I guess it can be, but I don't think that you will find this social drama like labeled on IMDb. Yeah. Okay, good. What is tagline? Slogan. Okay. What is slogan? Just in short, what do we use tagline or slogan for? In a way, yeah, why not? Network by limit. Phrase to sum up the film story. Is it the pitch? No, not really. Pitch is usually the idea, the log line. So that's the pitch. Tagline is or slogan or motto of the film. It's usually already happening at the distribution stage of the film, and it's the special phrase that is created to promote the film, like to sell the film. And it's not really the it doesn't have to reflect the idea of the film. That's for students who didn't really visit the previous lesson. So do you remember some famous taglines? Because last time I showed you some famous taglines. Do you remember the slogan for No More Swim? That's the creative slogan now. You're creating a new slogan. I think it was like you will not go into the water anymore or something. Men can fly. Yeah. So what was the slogan for Joker or the Dark Knight. And that's the famous Joker's phrase. I guess it can be like the only one that Joker is famous for. Yeah, so read one. This is your answer to what tagline is. Like, tagline is this catchy phrase that as soon as you hear it, you already have the image, especially if you know the film. So you have this connection, first of all, to the main character, then who pronounces this phrase probably, or it's an artificial phrase that you will not really hear in the movie, but it's something that is connected, quite tied to the plot. Yeah. So this is the tagline or slogan you can find again on IMDb website, or sometimes it can be used in marketing promotion campaigns. Okay. What are the main steps of the hero's journey? So try to enumerate down everything that you remember. So what is like the first step, the second? Try to refresh which steps Neo from the Matrix went through. So while you're typing all the steps, so what is the first one? Okay, we have meeting the mentor or the master. Ordinary world. Yeah. So the first one is ordinary world. So everything is known, everything is fine. Okay. So the next one. What triggers the main character for action? How do we call this step? When Neo got the message, wake up, the Matrix has you, follow the white rabbit. So how do we call it? I already said this word a few times, but attached another meaning. Okay, system crashed. So it is called the call to adventure. Then we have meeting with a mentor or master. Okay, what happens next? So just remember the metrics. So Neo met Morpheus. What happened next? The transition. An ordinary world. Yeah. So that's sort of like the door to an ordinary world. It's like crossing the first threshold. Okay. What was next? Whom do we meet after we cross this first threshold? And we are in an ordinary world, unknown world. supporters of hero, friends. So if we have friends, we also have the opposites of friends. So actually this step can be called like it can be combined. So it can be friends, it can be tests, as you remember. So Neo met the friends, then at the same time he was supposed to go through some tests, and as like the ending of the stage, so there were the opposites of friends, the enemies. So it's all like it is happening usually quite quickly. So friends, tests, enemies. Okay. What's the next step? It is also called the midpoint of a script or of a film. Yeah, the hero's journey is quite difficult to refresh. So the meeting with Pythia, what was it for Neo? So the midpoint of the script or of the film. So it's one more step of the hero's journey, one more stage of it. How do we call it? So meeting with Pythia or meeting the oracle. Noah, I know that you're reading The Hero with 1,000 Faces. Okay, that's tough. So, refreshing. Meeting with Pythia, it's called the ordeal, like the main test for Neo. But it is the main test for Neo, so it's not really the main test for him for the whole journey, for the whole movie as we know it. So as soon as we have the ordeal, we need to have like a present, a reward. And if you remember, so for Neo, the main ordeal meeting with Pythia was to find out that he was not sort of the one, and he got the information that either he or Morpheus would die soon, and it was Neo who would choose who would die. And that is the whole ordeal going on. And then Neo decided to go and save and rescue Morpheus from the agents, and he succeeded. So that was his reward for going through this ordeal. So rescuing Morpheus was the reward, and then Trinity, Morpheus, and Neo wanted to go back to the ordinary world, but something bad happened. So, and we're coming to the third act, or we are coming to the final stage of the hero's journey, when the hero faces the final test, which he didn't really know about at the very beginning of his journey, because for Neo, at the very beginning of his journey, it was important to find out if he was right about his thoughts about the world, if actually he had something special, some special skills, like if he was the chosen one, and that was resolved during the midpoint of the film. But then there was a twist, so usually in the middle of the film we got the new information, something that is not expected, and for Neo it was the fight with the agent for real, after which he was resurrected, and it's the final stage of the hero's journey, the resurrection, and coming back with some elixir, some knowledge, some new transformation. So, and that's the circle of the hero's journey finished. So try to remember and refresh, especially using Neo's journey, because it's the most visual example. And what is this? Yeah, so it is sort of well done. Try to remember by heart the steps, because while you're watching the film, so then you will predict the next step. So if it's the film that is based on the original standard hero's journey, if it's not, then you would be surprised. You will see that the scriptwriter or film director, so they try to implement something new so that to surprise you. Well, I didn't do well. Yeah, that's for other students who did well. Okay, it's great that we refreshed some information from the previous lessons. From history, I'm quite happy that you remember some interesting facts, some very basic facts from the history. We also touched upon some information about producers, and today we're going to talk more about the producer. And I asked you the question, so who gets the Oscar for the Best Picture? You told me the producer, and then I asked you what type of producer. And so that was a little bit question where we start, so which types of producers we have. So types of producers can be different, and there can be actually more than these 4 types that you have here on the slide, but these are the most popular. These are the most sort of responsible people, and usually these people you always have to have on big budget films. Of course, if we're speaking about some short film productions, it's usually like 1 or 2 producers, like probably just the producer and the executive producer. So let's see what's the difference between all of these producers. So the first one is, of course, the producer, and his or her credit will be like the producer or produced by. And this is the person who manages fundraising. So this is the person who searches for money so that to actually start doing the project, start to find the opportunities to greenlight the project. He is also responsible for hiring the key personnel. He assembles or she assembles the crew, creative crew and technical crew. Also takes part in distribution because it's his or her project. Therefore, there are some ideas, of course, for distributions. So the aims, the goals, how to distribute the film. And so the producer needs and has to know all the aspects of film production cycle, needs to know the creative aspect, the technical aspect, how to promote, how to distribute film, how to negotiate with the different sponsors, investors, studios, networks, broadcast, and so on and so forth. So everything from the development to completion. So it is the only one person who stands from the very beginning until the end. So that's why this person gets the Oscar. Then producer can have helpers as producers also. named in this production cycle, but they fulfill a little bit different roles. So in the first place, we can have executive producer. So he or she doesn't really deal with some searching for finance. He or she needs to understand how it works from the financial point of view, like how much money is spent on this or on that part of film production. May or may not need to understand some creative process. He or she usually supervises the technical part of filmmaking process and helps the project to go into production. So therefore it is executive producer, like to execute the film production. So this person doesn't really go to some fancy meetings or drinks a lot with future sponsors or investors. So this person is very pragmatic, and he is responsible for just the organization and implementation of all of these things to happen into film production. Then we can have a line producer. So this person is usually in between, like this studio and the producer and the production manager. So production manager is responsible for the production office, and it will be a little bit later. So line producer manages the production budget. He or she is always on the line, and so lines up the resources needed. But line producer, again, doesn't really help to find the money for the production. He or she manages the budget that is already in the production and oversees so that the film production just stays in the budget that they have for this production, and so tries to control everything. There can be as well a few producers, there can be a few executive producers and a few line producers, because so sometimes they need to collaborate, they need to put their powers together so that, and to find money, and for example they can put their own money into production, they can invite their friends producers to help them to support from financial point of view. Of course there can be more than one executive producer, because for example shootings can take place in different countries, so therefore one person cannot really oversee all of this shootings going at different times, or for example one executive producer can oversee shootings on locations, others on the set. So it's better to have, of course, like up to, I don't know, 5 or 7 executive producers, so that to run the whole process smoothly. With line producers, it's almost the same. They also can be connected to different locations, to different periods of shootings. But again, this is more about big budget films. Another type of producer that is more connected to probably studios or networks or broadcast, this is creative producer. This person needs to understand mostly the situation on the market, analyze the audience, and try to understand what will be more perspective to make from the point of view of film production or TV series production, so anything. He or she investigates what will be more perspective. But on the other hand, he or she can also assemble the right team, because on the other hand, creative producer needs to be like a casting director as well, so that to know the actors, of course, to know their availability, which films they're taking part in now. So just creative producer needs to know a lot of stuff as well. But creative producer doesn't really need to know how to find the money. So this is the producer's main task. And creative producer sees the project through to the final stages of production, if it's possible, and again knows each aspect of the production process, and so on and so forth. So usually producer and creative producer can start the project. So creative producer can be like a consultant for a producer in terms which ideas to generate, so which idea to pursue for this or that film production, so that maybe it's in the trend, or it has like a great time period to develop this project now, for example. And then, of course, creative producer can stay with the project or can just give some advice during the whole production period. Yeah, so these are the four main types of producers. But I guess you can name some other producers that you probably heard. Or maybe some other titles of producers that you may saw in the final credits or opening credits of the films. Do I know any examples of creative producers? Usually creative producers really stuck with networks or broadcasts, because or they usually work for like big studios, so you can find them there. Sometimes creative producers can also be like the film directors can be credited with creative producer, because they sort of created the main idea for the film. So on the one hand, a film director can be a creative producer as well. But if you want me to know like the separate name of like creative producers which is famous nowadays, I don't know. I'm mostly into some producers because on the one hand, I'm sort of like a creative producer in the way of generating the ideas, so which films or which trends ideas will be popular for film production. So for me, creative producer can be like an enemy. Competitor, yeah. So creative producers, yeah, they can be on freelance, or they can be connected to a studio. Yeah, yeah, we will talk about big producers and like who are these highest grossing producers in Hollywood. Yeah, well, you will see the names. So do you know any other producers? Because here like producer, or produced by, executive producer, line producer, this and creative producer, this is the most famous titles. So maybe you know some others. No, I don't really mean like the names of them. I mean some other credits of film producers, so that you can navigate yourself in from this production department. Yeah, like dealing with the producers. Okay, then I'll ask you. So we can have co-producer. So what do you think about who is the co-producer? Because now you know that producer is the person who tries to find the money, so that's the main point. Others producers don't try to find the money, it's not their job. So they have more pragmatic and other tasks to do. Substitution of main producer. In a way, yeah, co-producer can, for example, producer is the big guy, so he's the big boss. He doesn't really need to deal with like this every day-to-day tasks and jobs. So he is the person, he doesn't really need to show up during the pre-production or production or post-production. So this is the most VIP person. So he or she, if he or she has time, so they can oversee some stages, and it's better do it, of course. But they have executive producers, they have line producers, production managers who report to him or her what's going on with film production, because producer doesn't really have one project. He can have more than one project, and so that to save the time and so that to be quite efficient, so he or she needs other people to do this like daily job. Co-producer can also, for example, it depends on the amount of money that is brought to the project. So if it's sort of the same level of money and time invested and different resources invested in film production, then the title will be producer. So for example, like 3 producers, so they did the same amount of time for work, they invested almost the same amount of money, and so they just share the responsibilities. That's okay. So if we have like another person who still wants to contribute to the project in terms of money and time, but not so much as the producer, so this person can become a co-producer. Still help, still money, still time, but not as much as the main producers. Yeah, and sometimes you can see that usually actors who are involved in the main parts, usually, they become co-producers. Why do they become co-producers of their own films or the films where they play the main parts? Because usually at some point, film production can run out of money, but they need to continue the production. So actors can help, but then they become co-producers. They have more power in taking some final decisions, because they're not just actors who are subordinate to film director and producer, but they also co-producer because they threw in some money, and sometimes they can even ask for some, yeah, so they can ask for some share of profits as well. So because you never know, today you have money, so everything is scheduled and calculated, but something bad happens. So where can you find the money so quickly if you have like a star in your movie? Well, you start negotiating. So you're trying to exchange what you can give. So okay, the credit, co-producer. Yeah, like if you watch films with great stars, DiCaprio, Brad Pitt. So Brad Pitt even has his own production company. So they're usually co-producers in their own films. On the one hand, it's not a big deal for them to throw in some money into production, but it's better for them to have some power, to have some voice in production, so that they, for example, if they want this scene to be resolved in this way, they can act not only as an actors, but as producers. So that's a very tricky path, because at this point, when an actor or an actress becomes a co-producer, then you need to compromise and negotiate with the film director, who is not a co-producer, for example, who's just a film director. Yeah. So that's different levels. Okay. We also need to establish production office and such a collaboration as production management. And the next powerful person is the production manager. And he or she usually supervises the production, personnel, technology, budget, schedule, manages this day-to-day budget in terms of salaries, production costs, equipment rental, and so on and so forth. And he or she is subordinate to line producer. So producers are usually on the top of film hierarchy. The next person on the step is the production manager or PM. So if it's a big budget film, so he or she can have like an assistant production manager. Also, if we're shooting in other countries or on some other locations where shooting's happening maybe at the same time or more or less plus some days at the same time, then we have a unit production manager or just unit manager, or sometimes it is called second unit production manager, so meaning that there is another shooting is taking place at the same time. So he or she will be the same as production manager, but for the secondary unit shooting. And then we have a production coordinator, PC, who is responsible for all the logistics, from hiring a crew, renting equipment, and booking talent. So it's dealing a little bit with actors even, and working closely with casting director. But he or she will be subordinate to production manager. So still production manager is like the second person after all the producers, who you can deal with if some problems or questions about the budget, schedule. Yeah. Then another powerful person is the first assistant director. So he or she, in a way, is in between the production department and directing department. Because first, assistant director oversees day-to-day management of the cast and crew, especially schedule, knows about the equipment, what's going on with the equipment, like renting costs, deals with the script, so and works closely with script supervisor as well, because they need to know that everybody knows that some changes were made, because then it has to be reviewed and reflected in different documents, so call sheets, these special documents that you need for everyday shootings. And first, assistant director also may direct extras. So, because film director doesn't usually, for example, if it's like thousands of people, so the film director doesn't go and tell everybody what to do. So usually first assistant director does this job, because he's just one step from film director's chair, and so he understands how to do it, and this can be also expected from him or her to do. Also, first assistant director can have an assistant, and it will be then second AD or assistant director, and then this person will be responsible for creating the call sheets, these daily documents that will be employed every day. And sometimes even second AD can also direct extras. So this is the steps how you can crawl into film industry from like the very first initial positions. Yeah, so can start with the second AD and even already direct some extras. Do you have any questions about this production, office and management? Have you heard about these professions? Have you had any connections and maybe some of your friends or colleagues work on any of these positions? Because we're still discussing the production department, starting with the producers at the very top and then coming step by step a little bit down in terms of the power and of course in terms of salaries as well. So speaking about the salaries, there is also a production accountant. So this person manages the money and ensures the production meets the budget and everyone is paid. He or she can have assistants, then they will be assistant accountants, and clerks responsible for this like everyday payrolls, because it's always different how people are being paid. So of course they have contracts, but for example, if you have people working for the production only 1 day or 2 days or 1 week, so everything is different. So you need to be sure that everyone is getting paid and everything is working. There is also one interesting point about how everything is being calculated in Hollywood. So at some point there was this phrase created as Hollywood accounting, sort of called creative accounting methods, when producers and accountants and lawyers also, they tried to be creative so that to maybe hide some money transactions. So they try to create some subsidiary formations, and so that not to pay huge taxes. So that is sort of like the dark part of film production, but well, everyone has it. Because everything is expensive, you want to cut the costs, and so you need to be quite smart and creative how to do it, so to have different opportunities, different schemes how to do it. So production accountant is of course closely connected with producers, with all the group of producers, with production manager, and it can be connected with first assistant director as well, so that to know that everything is going well, everything is on the schedule and on the budget. So, any questions so far about the producers, production office, management? Because I'm going to show you a video about a producer. So she will talk how she thinks this whole production is built and what she sees as a producer. So let me just maybe after this video you will have some questions. So we will watch just a part of it.
The job of putting together a movie is really kind of monumental, particularly a large movie that has many different locations. Some of the movies I've made have shot all over the world. You'll put together various crews in each place. In the Mission Impossible films that I was involved with, Mission 1, 2, and 3, we had shoots going in the US, a second unit in Germany, we were shooting in Italy, we were shooting in China. So it's how do you coordinate these people so everybody's working together. Part of the job of the producer is to put together a group of people that interact with synergy, that are moving together to create this behemoth piece of entertainment, the movie. It's challenging, and of course you're working with your director. As a producer, your director has people that he or she have worked with many times before, and it's a good idea to try to have people that you've worked with before, but sometimes that can't happen. Look, producing a film is like putting together this huge company designed to do this one thing, and everybody has a different job. You put it all together really fast, they do the job, and just when they're all working together in a great collaborative way, then it's time to move on and do the next one. The producer is in charge of everything, from the concept and the development of the screenplay, all the way to the marketing and distribution of the film, understanding the international marketplace, understanding how to advertise the film, the publicity of the film. Working on a film with a smaller budget, I think, is much more challenging, because every nickel that you have has to be spent in the right place at the right time. And it's not to say that that isn't the case with a large budget. And in a small, tiny budget, we had a 30-day shooting schedule. We couldn't go over budget or over schedule by one nickel or one day, and we didn't. There's no more money. Once you spend the money in a small independent film, that's it. You better hope you're finished.
All right. So that was one of producers, Paula Wagner. She established a film production company with Tom Cruise as well, so she's the producer of all the Mission Impossible films. So as you can see, this lady is who knows? I don't know. But anyway, so first of all, like, a lady can be a producer as well, as the man. Too many. Well, but anyway, so they bring money, so they are quite good box office films, so why not? People go and watch them. I mean, like, even I enjoyed Mission Impossible 1 and the second part as well. I don't remember anything after the second part. Yeah. So anyway, producer is the person who is responsible for everything from the very beginning until the end. Needs to know needs to know everything about the film production, not only the film production, but film marketing, promotion, and be quite intelligent, and person needs to deal with networking as well, so everything. So to be producer is quite challenging as well. Canada is an important woman now. Okay, yeah. So moving to the next part of production department. It's about location management And if you remember that even at the development stage of film production, so location manager can be also involved because you need to know in advance uh, which locations are available, which are not. So that's location manager to help. So location manager reports to production manager or first AD or director or executive producer. So he is also quite a powerful guy because he deals with the location. And he is responsible for the final clearing of a location for filming. So it means that this location is available and then the location is wrapped. So he or she assists production and finance regarding location permit and fees. So location manager doesn't deal with like paying for the location, but he or she needs to reveal all the information. So to give all the information to executive producer, production manager, and then to production accountant. So like how much money will be spent to use this location. He or she can also have like an assistant location manager who arranges technical scouts for the essential stuff, like for grips, for electric department, camera, also during filming to oversee the operation, whereas line location manager continues pre-production somewhere else. So that's like the assistant to location manager. It's always great to have a help so that to deal with some other stuff, because location manager is again like a producer in production department. He needs helpers as well. And there is also location scout, a person who does the actual research, footwork, and photography to document location possibilities. So this is the person who really goes to location, travels to location. So he or she can take photos or videos of the location and then send to production so that they can see or choose the location or reject it. It's interesting that nowadays, of course, these location managers, they usually freelancers. In this case, it's more convenient and for them and for the film production because, well, it's quite handy. And so for location manager, of course, it's, I guess, more perspective and they can earn much more money and they can be more flexible. Also, they can have like different location managers, they can have their own databases with locations. They can have some agreements with studios, especially if there are some stages involved or backlots needed for film production that they're involved in. Or these locations can be like unique because a location manager is a person who really needs to know everything about the possible locations from historical point of view, from contemporary point of view, needs to know all the bars and restaurants and apartments and some historical places, sightseeing places, so that he or she needs to know like how to get the location, what are the possibilities. So and it's better for him or her to be to know everything not only about in this particular country but overseas as well, like to communicate with film productions and studios in other countries, because sometimes it can be even cheaper to shoot in other countries. And then, of course, if your location manager knows about it, then it's a good location manager. There can be also location assistant. He or she is hired by location manager, and this is the person with the keys. So because he or she needs to be the first on the set, to open the door, so that to allow the set dressers and like the first comers for shooting to prepare the set. And then this person stays during the filming period and after the filming, so that to clean everything. And this person is also responsible to deal with different complaints from neighbors, for example. If you shoot somewhere like in a building and it's like a living building, then you need to have permissions from the neighbors, and if something goes wrong, then you need to somehow to deal with it. Yeah, because then if something goes wrong, then you need to contact a first AD, you need to contact production manager, you need to contact, even if it's like a serious case, line producer or even executive producer. So this is like the hierarchy goes up. Yeah, so there are some problems because it's just the whole production involved. Do you have any questions about location managers or management? Because I'm going to show you some location managers and especially location scouts, how they actually do the work. So let's see the video then first.
Quiet for rehearsal.
Before the lights are set up, or the cameras can roll for a movie, someone has to find the perfect place to shoot it.
Hi, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm a film location scout with Paramount Pictures. We're doing a
That's
film production
Nick
at-
Carr's job. You may know his work from Spider-Man 3 or War of the Worlds. His name doesn't usually appear until the end of the credits, but when a new film gets the green light,
Hey, are we moving that lift?
he's on the front lines.
Does it start when you get handed a script?
Yeah, locations departments are, after accounting, the first departments that get hired in New York City. And my whole job is about looking. It's about staring at the city, and you start seeing these little things that stand out as different. Drew, go to 2.
Carr is part of the location team for the new film by Sopranos creator David Chase.
Our movie takes place in the 1960s. We needed a period look, and he just absolutely fell in love with it as soon as he drove through.
So Pearl River, New York is standing in for a New Jersey town.
So Sebi's House of Subs doesn't really exist.
That is our creation. We built a few sets on town.
There's no school for location scouts.
Yeah, I'm on my way.
Most stumble into the job.
We have to be diplomats, accountants. We have to have a good eye aesthetically.
Like Ilt Jones, the 6'6" Welsh-born, Los Angeles-based scout who's lined up locations for films like Pulp Fiction and As Good as It Gets.
Basically got to launch a charm offensive on the populace and hope that they bend to your will. Money helps. Figment of the writer's imagination. Inception is a case in point.
The script for the Oscar-nominated film included a dream sequence in which a freight train barrels down the center of a city street.
And of course, downtown doesn't have any train tracks going through it, so what should we do?
How did you settle on this location?
We liked it because it was a controllable section of street.
So they shot along Spring Street and created their own train.
We built our own train on top of a semi-tractor, and and it had 2 or 3 carriages. It looked great.
Good enough to fool a drunk Jones met on the set early one morning.
The drunk guy goes, "Is that a train?" And I said, "Yeah, that's a train." He goes, "Man, I gotta quit drinking."
The best locations can
Okay, so that is a little preview of what Location Scout does. And as it was stated in the video, so there is no school for Location Scout. So you can actually if you're good with photography, recording videos of some places, if you have a good eye, so you just can just jump into this and offer some location scout work that you can do, like footwork. You have to walk a lot and spot some interesting places and just to know how to get them. Yeah, so that's about the location management. So if you want to get into this big budget film, so you can consider being a location scout as an entry position, and then who knows, then you can become like an assistant location manager. So we're going to production budget. So what we need to consider, so that to see how to organize everything and what we pay for, so what are the costs. So usually line producer, unit production manager or production accountant or production manager, they prepare the budget for a film production because they know what they need and how much it would cost. So they prepare a document of approximately 130 pages, but again, it can vary, with 4 main sections. And I guess maybe the 2 main first sections you've heard of, but didn't really pay attention to, or maybe you don't really understand what these sections are about. So the first one is above the line, and it is called the creative talent. And the second one is below the line. So this is like the direct production costs or the technical talent. And then we have post-production, which is about costs on editing, visual effects, color grading, sound, and so on and so forth. And one more that is called other. So it's about insurance, completion bond, and so returning the money. This budget excludes film promotion and marketing since it's the additional document that should come from the distributor or distributors. So this is their job to do. And we need to remember that film budget is the grand total of actual spending. It's not net budget when the final out of pocket for the producer after this government incentives and rebates. So film budget is the grand total of actual spending. So have you heard about this above the line and below the line budget? Nope. Because usually people think that, okay, so there is some line that you should not cross. So you should stay above the line or below the line. Okay. So then I need to show you the actual document so that you understand what is this below the line and above the line. So here you can see some example of film budget. It's just a sample, and here I mark specially for you the total above the line. It means all the creative talent. So here you have costs on writer, script writer, story rights, something like this. So producers go also in this section, director, and principal costs, and actually all the actors, so they go into this section. So the total amount of money that you spend on this part is called the creative part, and it is above the line, because below the line will go the technical part. production designer and director of photography will also go into this below the line section because, well, of course, they're creative people as well, but they will be just in another section because they deal with technical part. They, for example, director of photography deals with camera and with grid department, electrical light department. Production designer deals with physical stuff like set decoration, costumes, makeup, and so on and so forth. So, and that's why they are separated on this film budget sheet. Yeah. So usually, like if the film budget is designed in a smart way, so then the creative expenses, they should be 1/3 of a budget, of like grand total budget. And the other part, like the technical part, post-production and others, they should take 2/3 of the budget. If, for example, your creative part is like half of the budget or even more, then it means that you will spend too much money on scriptwriter, actors, producers, and then you will have to squeeze on your technical departments. But usually it's not a good story because I guess the technical part then will suffer a lot. So it's better to have 1/3 of your budget on creative part and 2/3 on the rest. Let's see what we include in budget and what are the elements. So first of all, we need to deal with the story, with the script. So if you want to buy like a script or you need to buy the story so that to adapt it, so then you need to have story rights. So you can spend up to $10 million so that to get the story rights. If you're writing a script and you so employ the script writers, so A-list screenwriters, they can earn up to $2 million and including like $400,000 a week for each rewrite if a film is in trouble. So in this case, a script writer becomes a script doctor. So and script doctors can again earn up to $200,000 a week. So script writers can actually, especially if they're like A-list script writers, so they can earn a lot of money for one film. As for producers, so producers, of course, they earn usually the most of the money because together with executive producers, because producer and executive producer who oversees the whole process, so they of course work a lot and they should be paid quite well. They are supposed to have bonuses and share of the profits. So that's how they usually earn the money on the project. Speaking of directors, so if we're talking about Hollywood system, so they have special guilds established there, and if the director is a member of Directors Guild of America Awards, then they are supposed to get around $20,000 per week, and they are contracted for minimum of 10 weeks of work. So this is the minimum amount of time that a film director should spend on a film. But if it's an A-list director, then he or she could earn up to $10 million per film. The same idea with actors. So if actors belong to Actors Guild, then they can earn about $2,500 per week. If it's an A-list actor, or actors, then it can be enormous. It can take up to $30 million per film. But as I told you before, so if an actor becomes a co-producer, or they can exchange like minimum fee for the share of the profits. So this share of the profits is a good deal, because like who knows how much money will film earn after its release. And if we're speaking about some extras, so they are paid about $150 per day. So, but again, it can vary, but usually it's some kind of like set minimum wage for their shooting day if they are in the union. So unions are quite popular in America. So in other countries, so it depends. In some others, there can be even no unions. So everything is just how you negotiate. Then you need to consider the production costs, like wages, how much you will spend on production design, on set, studio costs, costumes, catering. So catering can eat up a lot of your budget as well. Accommodation, transportation, travel, hotel stay, and so on and so forth. So production cost is usually about already like this below the line budget. But in this below the line budget, director of photography is the highest paid. Then goes the production designer. If we talk about visual effects, CGI, so it's more about post-production, but usually, or if we need to have this visual effects and shooting at special companies, so then it can again rise our budget. So it can take up to like $100 million that we can spend on visual effects. And for example, this, as an example, Industrial Light and Magic, the most prestigious and expensive company in terms of visual effects. So actual visual effects, then they are quite expensive. And if we're speaking about music, soundtracks, usually, yeah, so if we're speaking about the music composer, so it's about 2% of total final of the film budget. And if it's an A-list composer, so then he or she can earn about $5 million per film. So these are the rough numbers if we're talking about some big budget films. And to give you a little bit more better understanding how it works in some blockbusters, here you can see $200 million blockbuster breakdown. So here you can see that director can earn, so that's the average, up to $4 million, producers, executive producers, and producers, so about like $1 million, writers, so depending, so it can be a group of writers, or there can be also like script doctors as well, so a few millions or some thousands of dollars. Director of photography can earn up to $900,000. Production designer a little bit less. Editor can also, but this is already the post-production. Costume designer, composer, and lead actors. So actors are the most expensive here, up to $12 million. And here, so you can see a little bit more. If we speak about the unit production manager, first assistant director can earn up to like $300,000. So because she does quite a great job. Then assistant directors. Co-producers can also earn some money as well. And then you can see some technical departments like cameramans, first camera, second camera, because, well, we can have more than one camera operating. And then editors, assistant editors, and so on and so forth. So if it's a big budget, then it's a great chance to earn lots of money. And speaking about earning lots of money from the point of view of being involved into production and the actual film making a lot of money, do you know which film, or like maybe a few films, that are considered to be the highest grossing films of all time? Do you know this hugest box offices? Well, money over a long period of time, yeah, but at the same time, I mean, you can work on one production and you can work on another production as well if you can combine, if you didn't really sign the very strict contract. And if, for example, we're talking about the lifespan of film production cycle, if we're talking about the production management or even line producers already involved in the production of the film after it was greenlit, then for 1 year earning like $1 million for a film and then starting working and searching for another project, I don't think that it's quite poor existence. For some technical, for post-production, so post-production can run for up to, yeah, it can also run up to like 1 year, but not always professions involved for 1 year, so it can be half a year or maybe even less. Okay. So, Avatar, Marvel Avengers. Yeah, let's have a look. Not starving. If you're not an extra, I don't think that you will star. No. So, highest grossing films. The first place is taken by Avengers The Endgame, then Avatar and Titanic. So these are the first three top films. Then you have also again Star Wars, Avengers Infinity War, Jurassic Park, The Lion King, that's the new one, the remake, the Avengers, the first part, Furious, and Frozen, the animated film. Yeah, so that's how it looks like. So blockbusters. Yeah, Gone with the Wind, it's if we talk about the inflation, so if we adjust for the inflation, so then Gone with the Wind will be at the first place. Then we have Avatar and then Titanic and then Star Wars and only then our top choice, The Avengers Endgame. Yeah, so then this is how it will work. Have you seen all of these top films, highest grossing films? Yeah, like if you look at the numbers of, even if it's just adjusted for inflation or highest grossing film just without inflation, so just billions of dollars. And considering the budget, so of course it's a huge profit. And if you had this option share for profit, then of course it's great. We have a question, how did old films get that much? Well, they managed to do it. Well, if you remember that Gone with the Wind was released in 1939, and of course, first of all, you need to consider that there were not so many other great films or the competitors in this field. So, and it was a huge advertisement, and I guess people were, I mean, like, I guess everyone went to see this film and not only once. Yeah, so TV was introduced in 1950s. So the main competitor of cinemas, yeah, people would go to cinemas and watch films there. Yeah. Okay. So, and I need to give you some names of the most famous film producers, the most bankable film producers. So I guess you already started thinking. So what do you think? What are the greatest, most famous, and richest film producers? Marvel. Some of these film producers, they, of course, film directors as well. They have their own production companies and they produce sequels, they produce TV series based on their films. Spielberg for sure. Yeah. So Steven Spielberg, you know this guy. You can read some short introduction. And so the average gross for his movies sits at $143 million. Jerry Katzenberg. Yeah, I guess so. I just have some names that are mostly associated with like successful film directors and producers. Peter Jackson, film director and producer of The Lord of the Rings. And also he produced King Kong. Got a lot of Selznick, yeah, from old Hollywood. Yeah. Another great film producer, Robert Zemeckis. So he grossed over $2 billion with Forrest Gump. Also, he's known for Back to the Future. Our Avatar guy, James Cameron, but so he has and Avatar and Titanic. He's not connected to Marvel story, well, but still. Yeah, so these are some names, some famous names. I also have a guy named Ryan Cavanaugh. So I don't know if you heard of him, but he financed more than 200 films. And so he earned the nickname of billion-dollar producer or money Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Yeah, I guess it's working. Okay. Something something went wrong. Yeah, so pay attention to this guy because he's named like billion-dollar producer. He was also involved in producing some even Oscar-nominated films. So he has a huge list of films. There is also Ron Howard. We know him from TV show The Andy Creepy and Happy Days, but he is also quite rich producer as well. There is also Chris Columbus. So he was involved in Harry Potter, and he is trying to produce new Gremlins. So he's quite rich producer as well. So on the one hand, you usually remember about the film directors who are great film producers, but on the other hand, when we start talking about producers who are not really film directors, and they don't really have this certain reputation in Hollywood, then you already don't know about this film producer. Yeah. So what I would like you to recommend to watch. So these are the films that I already recommended you to watch to have a general understanding which stages of film production we go through. But if you haven't seen this film yet, so you can focus on, again, Dangerous Days, the making of Blade Runner, starting from the very beginning and listening to the interviews of producers and executive producers being involved. So who is the producer of Blade Runner, for example? So we know the film director, Ridley Scott. But who was the producer of Blade Runner? Who had troubles with Ridley Scott? And actually, if you don't know that, the Who crew went on strike during Blade Runner production because they cannot really tolerate Ridley Scott anymore. He was like a desperate. The other one, Francis Ford Coppola's Hearts of Darkness, a filmmaker's apocalypse. So again, of course, Francis Ford Coppola was one of the producers, and he's usually and traditionally one of the producers of his films. So it's an interesting perspective how to combine and the role of producer and film director as well. And the recent documentary about Spielberg, when he mainly talks about film direction, but we know that Spielberg is a great producer as well. Yeah, so that's what you can watch. So we completed the producer lesson. My congratulations to you. Do you have any questions, or maybe I missed some of your questions that you wrote here? Just let me check. Harrison Ford is quite rich. I don't know how many millions he earned, but he is one of the highest grossing actors as well. So you can actually find information on highest grossing actors. Not only the films, but how much money they earn. Oh, we have a recommendation about Ghostbusters. We already had something connected with this film in terms of tagline. Okay. So, do you have any questions about producers? And when you will watch your next film, so try to pay attention to the credits, final credits, so that to support the new professions that we went through today, because now I guess you will understand what these people do. The ghostly documentary talks really deeply about the production. Okay, well, I never watched it, of course. Usually when we talk about some great documentaries, so it's Blade Runner coming, Hearts of Darkness. If you want to see how Avatar was created, so there are some great documentaries about Avatar from different aspects, and especially from visual effects. Great documentaries on Lord of the Rings as well. So Harry Potter, some Marvel. Hearts of Darkness is depressing. Well, it's the reality of film production. Okay, if you don't have any questions, so I guess then I'll just remind you that next time we're going to discuss film director, his or her rights and responsibilities, some great names, or maybe some names that we don't really know, but still we should. And we will talk about direction department. So you already know about the first AD, a little bit of script supervisor, and we will also talk about concept artist and some other people who are involved with film director in the direction department. So for all the aspiring film directors out there, there will be interesting information to know, to learn about. Okay. So I guess I will see you at the next lesson. I hope